Well into the 20th century, single-room occupancies, or SROs, were widely available in big cities. Think dorm rooms, about the size of a one-car garage, often with shared kitchens and bathrooms. But by the 1960s, public opinion began to turn. Stacey Livingston is a researcher for UC San Diego's homelessness hub.
SROs had a real negative connotation. They were seen as housing that essentially like outsiders lived in, transients, folks who didn't want to work, folks who didn't want to get married.
Society labeled SROs a blight. When cities started pushing for urban renewal, they destroyed SRO buildings. Livingston says when San Diego revitalized Horton Plaza and the Gas Lamp Quarter in the 80s, it lost a quarter of its SROs at once. People were pushed out of SROs and onto the street. The so-called blight of poverty became even more visible. It was a wake-up call for the city. Council members passed an emergency ordinance in the 80s to try to preserve the SRO buildings that remained. It didn't work. By 2002, there were only 110 SRO buildings left. Research shows by 2023, that had dropped to just 35. And the city's homeless population had grown to more than 6,500 people. Livingston says the legacy of SRO stereotypes remains today.
There are ideas that these are people living with substance use issues. There are ideas that these are people who don't really want to work or have a family that are disconnected from traditional work and family roles. These are deeply historical stereotypes, and they really don't reflect the reality of who's living in SROs in San Diego.
She says most SRO occupants are seniors and people with disabilities who live on fixed incomes, people leaving homelessness, and the minimum wage workers who keep downtown running. In the current housing affordability crisis, the city has prioritized SROs again. Mayor Todd Gloria introduced incentives for developers to build more of them. Projects that include SROs can win exemptions from certain zoning restrictions. But a city spokesperson says since those incentives passed 2 years ago, the number of new SRO units permitted is 0. I asked a local developer, Sohel Nakshab, why he thinks those incentives haven't worked yet.
I think the question you should be asking is more, is it affordable to develop anything right now? Costs are just astronomically out the roof for construction, materials, and labor. Interest rates are high. Land prices are out the roof too.
A few years ago, Nakshab built micro apartments in the East Village. They're about the same size as SROs. He rents them for about $1,800 a month. Still, he says he can't even justify a project like that anymore.
If I were to build that building today, it's going to cost me 30 or 40% more than it did 3 years ago. That's a crazy hike in cost.
And forget about developers renting them at SRO rates.
They would need to go more market rate so they can survive. I mean, they've taken all this risk, they've put up all this equity, they've got investors that they have to answer to.
He says to make SROs appealing to build, the city would need to offer even more drastic incentives. No development or permit fees, even less regulation. Renovating existing SRO buildings can also be unprofitable. They tend to be about a century old. So renovation costs are high, but rent is low. Colin Miller is a vice president of real estate for the San Diego Housing Commission.
A developer will say, look, it will cost us more to renovate this building than to tear it down and build something newer, bigger, and denser.
And with higher rents. The commission wants to try a new tactic. They pitched the city council to create an affordable housing preservation fund. The council will vote on it later this fall. It would pull together government dollars and private donations to buy up properties and keep their rents affordable for the long term. The city has been trying a slew of strategies to encourage more affordable housing, fast-tracking permits, creating new incentives, funding construction directly. It is working to increase housing stock, But units the city deems affordable can rent for more than $2,000 a month, twice the rent of a typical SRO, putting them out of reach for many who have nowhere else to go. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.